So, have any of you studied Galatians before? Any study? A little bit? Anything that comes to mind immediately as we're...
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
He refers to Jesus' young brother, right?
Yes, younger brother. Yep.
So Paul didn't know Jesus, did he? I mean, personally.
No, he didn't. Not personally. So so author of Galatians is Paul.
Instituted the church,
Mm-hmm.
again, making up all the rules, trying to get the gold stars.
Right. And it was ultimately, you guys aren't following the rules right. You're following some other guy who's not really the Messiah, so we want you to... Jesus, right? Jesus shows up and says, Paul, why are you persecuting me?
So in effect, he had met Jesus.
He did, yes, but he didn't...
But not knowing him.
He hadn't walked as a disciple with, he wasn't one of the people who just kind of followed behind.
Right.
He came to this faith after Jesus died, was resurrected, and ascended. So Kyle brings up this idea of institutional syndrome. What is that? Do you remember what that was he was talking about?
The people in prison didn't know how to live freely.
Right. So they've been released from prison, but they're kind of almost in prison, right? They're still stuck in that same mindset.
Everything was ordered for them.
Following the rules, but
Everything was ordered for them.
mm-hmm. Right.
They didn't make decisions for themselves.
So how was it like following Christ, specifically?
Because Paul
what's going on?
himself was so used to following the set rules in Christ.
Been saved, not through works, so that no one can boast. So that's something that he learned personally, but there's something going on in Galatians that we're kind of getting the sense of. What is going on in the churches of Galatia?
They're following somebody else.
There's somebody else who's coming in and saying, yes, you should follow Jesus. Following Jesus is good, but you also have to do all of this stuff. Right? They're saying you have to do this and this and this and this and this and this.
They're getting away from the world.
A little bit, yeah. Where are these people coming from? What is this group called? Do you remember what he called them?
Judaizers.
The Judaizers, right?
That's right.
So,
It's set parameters. You have to meet these different goals. You get to go 3, then you got to go 4, whatever it's called.
on the top of the law, here's all the extra laws that the Pharisees have added to tell us like exactly what we're supposed to do and how we're supposed to do it and all that sort of stuff. If you do all these things in all the right ways, then you will earn righteousness. Right? That's what they were used to. But Jesus comes, structure, which is helpful, right? Are those things helpful? Yeah, of course. Go back and look at it. Verse 4. Would someone look up verse 4 and read it?
Who gave himself for our sins to deliver us from the present evil age, according to the will of our God and Father.
Okay. There are 3 actions that who's he in this sentence? Kind of obscure.
Because of the will of God.
But he does the will of God.
Yeah.
Okay. So who's the person who does the action there? Those 3 actions are done by Jesus. How many of the actions, what does this verse tell us about us, about humanity? From this present evil, right? Mm-hmm. So, if Jesus does all the action here, what do we do to earn our salvation?
We don't
Nothing.
It's a gift.
We do, it's a gift, right? It's a free gift. And this is why Paul is so upset, because there are these people who are coming in. No, we see it a lot. Do we see it around, just in the world around us? Yeah. It's just the way that it's this transactional sort of understanding that it's almost geared into us. Right? That's the way things make sense. why do we keep falling back into it?
We can
Sometimes
check
it's
things
easier.
off.
That lead to.
More things.
I am perfect, right? And if we have salvation, and it's because I did all these things, then it's, look at all the things that I've done, right? I've earned this. I deserve it. What?
We do it so we look good to others.
And we can look good against others, right? I'm worthless. I'm nothing, right? So we can either be prideful or we can have despair. I'm all over the place here. That's okay. Have you ever fallen back into that sort of, back into stuff? Those old patterns? Maybe the judgmentalism and that sort of stuff, but it's other stuff, isn't it? Every time I've told you this before, but every time I weed, which obviously, if you look at my garden, is not often, but when I weed, right, I always think of this is what our spiritual life is. Later, they're back, right? And if we don't constantly pull that stuff out, it's going to just keep cropping up. It's not like I go in and go, oh, I'm going to plant some more weeds today, because they happen. Those things in us, they... So he says in verse 8 and 9, he talks about the other people who might come and preach a different gospel. What does he have to say about those people?
Let them be cursed.
Let them be cursed. Well, what if it's he himself? What if he comes back and he says a different gospel?
He would be a curse too if he came.
He would be a curse. What if it was an angel came down from heaven, right?
I mean, why would you?
They should be a curse, right?
Yeah.
Anyone who's going to get up and say, you have to earn your salvation, that's a problem. They should be cursed, right?
Well, God told me, try to convince you.
Yeah.
I was visited by an angel in heaven, and they told me I needed
Right?
to cut my grass.
So why is he writing? Why is he writing this?
Whatever.
Verse 11 and 12. What's the purpose for him writing this?
Because it,
To win the favor of God.
Do what?
Win the favor of God.
Win the favor of God? Specifically, where's this gospel that he's preaching? If the gospel that he is preaching is the correct one and this other one is the wrong one, where's his gospel come from? From Jesus Christ himself, right? It's not some sort of made-up thing of humanity where we go, well, it can't just be grace. It can't just be a free gift, right? You have to do this and this and this. No, this is direct from the source, right?
because
This
we
is
can't believe it's so simple, we have to make it harder.
yes, absolutely, right. Yeah, you can't just want to love me, right? Again, because we have no, not me, right? You can't just love me. Or we go the other way and go, well, obviously you love me, but I mean that person, right? Either of those are a problem, right? Just kind of said it. The fact that it comes from Jesus, that comes from God directly.
Because it's not something that man came up with.
Right. It's direct from the source. That's pitter-patter of little ashers. It comes directly from God, right? It's not something that we made up. And I love the bit where he says, well, am I saying this to please people? Am I saying this to make God like me? Right? If I was in the business of trying to please people, I would not be preaching the gospel, because if you're doing it right,
And when
when necessary, use words.
or actions, that's.
Right. Which, and we'll get to this, there is a purpose for those good things that we do. There is a purpose for the law, but it's just not to prove our righteousness. So in what ways does this idea that the gospel comes directly from Jesus contribute to Paul's central argument throughout the book of Galatians?
It makes them more authoritative.
Right.
They actually experienced it.
Right? You may have these people who are coming before you and saying, I'm getting it from Jesus Christ himself,
Especially
who
since,
appeared to me.
given his past, he was,
Mhm.
he didn't believe any of it himself.
Yeah.
He was a true.
Which is where he ends chapter 1, right? He
He who is once persecuted is not preaching the faith they once tried to destroy. And they glorify God because of me.
right. Who is glorified because of this? God is. Right? They glorify God because this has happened. As you reflect on your life, how have you changed as a result? You don't necessarily have to answer, but if you would like to, you can. But think about it. Right? Have you witnessed the life change of other Christians around you as a result of their embracing the gospel? Have you seen this in someone else?
I've seen it in people that all of a sudden realize there's a time that they need to pray, and they'll pray with you.
Hmm.
And that's a result that they embrace it.
And sometimes it's just being that person that someone can come to. This is not necessarily a Christian making that switch, but someone who's an unbeliever and going, you know what, I need to talk to you about this. Like, there's something different about you. What's going on here? I had the blessing of having a really deep conversation with some friends of ours that they're kind of agnostic. They're on the outside of the church, certainly. And we were just talking. And they got to ask some questions that had been kind of rolling around in their mind, and I was able to answer them in a very, and they thanked me for not being overly pushy. They were kind of, you're a preacher, but it's thank you for not being like, oh, come to church on Sunday and blah, 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 it's this very sort of, but I was there for them to ask go somewhere. But it's a great blessing to be that person where someone can go, you know what? I know that you're not going to judge me. Just, this is something I'm struggling with, right? That can be a change.
I'm currently doing that now. I work with one of my coworkers, really come into like doing a lot of meditation, learn some soul searching, and
Right, some spirituality
we've had
kind
some
of stuff.
pretty good Bible studies at work lately.
Yeah.
So, I don't know that he's even 50% there yet. But
Right.
just the fact that he's talking about it is unbelievable.
He's
You blow me
probably-
over with a
He's
feather.
probably seeing you living your faith too.
Yeah, yeah, that's true too.
And that's the awesome 13 years. Yeah, absolutely. Who have come to faith by being yelled at on the street corner. Great. But I think so often, like the way that sometimes it goes, and even more often it goes, is that, like, let's be friends. Let's love people. Let's share, preach the gospel, and when necessary, use words.
I think sometimes it pushes people away.
Yeah.
Necessary, use words.
I think
there-
sometimes it pushes people away.
Yes,
from trying to
Absolutely.
Because it did me.
We're living in many ways, this sort of post-Christendom kind of like neo-paganist world. I'm not so sure about that. Sometimes we like part of what's interesting about Galatians is thing where I just do this. I show up on Sunday and I say all the prayers and I'm good, right? I'm saved. No. We can also go, like your friend, the other way. And our culture is very much this sort of like, I'm spiritual, not religious. Okay, spiritual is great, but both religion and spiritualism are not ultimately the goal. What is the goal? And religion is good, and it can get us there, but thank Him for saving you, and pray for opportunities to share the good news of Christ's life, death, and resurrection with others. Right? So often we don't really thank God for what He has done. We don't thank Jesus. Share. Tell one person about how the gospel has affected your life. Explain how knowing Jesus has changed you. That could be someone who's a professing Christian. It could be someone who is not. Just, we as Presbyterians, we're not as good at that sharing part. Maybe, And it's about us, right? You don't have to have all the answers. How has God changed you? How has your life been changed by a relationship with Jesus Christ? Right? That testimony side of things. 3 and 9:1 to 31 to study Paul's conversion. Make note of how encountering Jesus transformed Paul's life. Also pay attention to, it's really fascinating, Paul, he tells his conversion story. There's these 2 times and there's in another letter. I'm not sure which one. But he tweaks it a little bit. Introduce the idea of legalism. Spend time this week taking a personal inventory. Do you believe your works save you or appease God? Has legalism cropped up in your life? Pray through your answers and tell another mature believer what you have learned. And again, it's easy to slip into this. It's easy to get into this. I love Amazing Grace. Amazing Grace is I sing that probably once a day or once a night because it's one of those that can get Asher back to sleep.
Yeah.
And it's great because it's also just kind of like, this is what it is, right? Saved a wretch like me. Anybody else?
One I like is Be Still My Soul. The Lord is on your side.
In the garden.
In the garden.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. So that about wraps up chapter 1. Join us next week. We'll read chapter 2. Go ahead and read chapter 2 of Galatians if you would like to. That'd be great. And go through, take that, your Sloan.
And I've been worrying about this. This is a crazy thing.